right. Hello, world. Can everyone hear me okay? Well, so nice to see everyone. This was CS50 Puzzle Day 2020. It's so nice to see so many faces from around the world. We're currently in quite the big Zoom meeting. We have some 586 participants right now, so this should be an amazing call. Before we begin, I thought I would give you a bit of backstory to what CS50 Puzzle Day has been all about. In just a moment, you'll see on my screen some visuals of Puzzles Days past. It turns out that this puzzle day was the 10th annual CS50 Puzzle Day that years ago started here on campus in Cambridge, Massachusetts at Harvard University. And it was all thanks to a former teaching fellow who was one of CS50's head teaching fellows when I first taught the class in 2007. A few years later, he went off and started working at Facebook. And it turned out, according to this teaching fellow named Thomas Carriero, that Facebook had a tradition of offering these puzzle hunts where they would have their team members solve really challenging, really interesting puzzles over the course of a day or an evening. And so we thought it would be fun to adopt a similar tradition for ourselves on Harvard's campus, among whose goals was to send the message really right at the very beginning of CS50 that computer science is not about programming per se, but indeed about problem solving more generally. And so we start CS50 itself here on campus every year, trying to reinforce that message while bringing people together collaboratively for a bit of fun. In healthier times, we have a lot of pizza and music and the like, but this year especially, it's been so fun to see so many people around the world partake. Here, for instance, is a photo of the very first CS50 Puzzle Day in 2011. It was a fairly modest affair. Maybe 100 or 2 students perhaps on campus were in attendance, and pictured at bottom right is Thomas, aka Tito, who was at the very end of the event presenting the solutions. And I'll admit that's one of my favorite aspects of CS50 Puzzle Day, what we are doing right now, seeing a whole bunch of smart people from now around the world delighting in the solutions to problems they either solved or maybe didn't quite completely solve along the way. Of course, CS50 Puzzle Day eventually made its way to New Haven, Connecticut in the US, where Yale University is, then down to Nicaragua, where we have friends and students and teaching assistants as well. In Iran, most recently, held their own CS50 Puzzle Day, and pictured here are some of our students in Cairo as well. Brian, just how large was the audience this year, in fact?
Yeah, as you can see here, we had 13,707 people register for CS50 Puzzle Day this year. So a lot of people interested in engaging with the puzzles. Ultimately, you were allowed to assemble into teams as well. So we had 2,170 teams that submitted answers for puzzles as part of CS50 Puzzle Day. And these teams came from all around the world. You can see here a list of the top 10 countries among people who were submitting puzzle solutions, but there were many other countries as well. Many participants from the US, from India, from Vietnam, Canada, Ukraine, Singapore, the UK, Iran, Brazil, the Philippines, and many other countries as well. And you all used a number of different tools in order to collaborate with each other, to work, to try and figure out these puzzles. Looks like among the more popular were WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, but also people communicating over the phone or in a Zoom call like this one, among other software tools that were used as well.
And in fact, many of you submitted quite a few photographs over the past several days. Just a few of those we thought we'd share here. Pictured here, some of you collaborating online, pointing at each other here in the tiles. Here's another, taking some comfort perhaps from some of your plush toys. Some very helpful notes, hopefully, that led to a solution to this puzzle. Here, perhaps some frustration along the way while solving some puzzles this past weekend. Here, too, a group collaborating from all over. Here, with notes in front of him. And then perhaps most representative of folks collaborating together with all of these papers and computers is perhaps this photo, which perhaps says it all. Before we introduce some of our special guests today and friends and the solutions to the puzzles themselves, we wanted to keep up a tradition that we've been doing over the past few months as we've been holding classes in form via Zoom around the web. We would like to take a group photo if you are so willing. If you would like to opt into this group photo, which will essentially be a whole bunch of screenshots, please feel free to keep your camera on. If you don't want to appear in this photo and on the internet, turn your camera off for just the next moment or so. And it's going to take me a moment or two to do all of these screenshots. But if you're comfortable participating, would like to wave or smile or look your best, I'm going to go ahead and start screenshotting all of you waving and smiling. But it's going to take a moment because there's 25 screenfuls of us right now. So I'm going through all of the faces, and maybe Brian, if you wouldn't mind doing it as well. And here I am stalling for time because I'm only up to the 7th screen, but that's okay. We're still going, taking lots and lots of screenshots here, still smiling, still delighting in this very increasingly long process. A lot of people have their cameras on, so I'm still going, but we're halfway there. Halfway there. And now I'm almost, okay, there we go. Now we have some cameras off or internet speed not cooperating. And I think we are done with that process. So at the very end of today, what we'll do is follow up with an email to those of you who solved at least a majority of the puzzles in CS50 Puzzle Day. So if you ended up getting at least 5 out of 8, will you receive your very own CS50 certificate via email. Keep an eye out for that as well. But of course, the most important thing we hope is that you had this amazing experience over the past few days, maybe met a few more people around the world, and ultimately had a chance to solve some problems. Throughout the following walkthroughs, please feel free to chat with each other, to express frustration in the chat or delight. Some of our favorite memories in person, or when people can be visibly sort of proud of themselves or upset with not having solved some puzzle. So we look forward to those moments ahead. But without further ado, CS50 Puzzle Day would not have been possible for the past 10 years, ever since Thomas initiated the idea with us here at Harvard, were it not for our friends at Facebook. And what I wanted to do was introduce 3 of our friends in particular first, Emily, Nick, and Ben from Facebook, who would like to say hello.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nick, and I am one of the university recruiters at Facebook. You'll chat with my colleagues as well, but nice to virtually meet you all. I hope you had fun and excited to see the results or the answers to all these questions. So nice to see you all.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I'm also a university recruiter at Facebook. Just wanted to say hello and hope that you had a great time, and so excited that all of you could participate in this year's Puzzle Day, and best of luck with your fall semester.
Hello there, I'm Ben Pastor. I am the university recruiter at Harvard and MIT for Facebook. This is my 4th puzzle hunt that I've been involved in, and I was blown away by CS50's first puzzle hunt that I walked into, because I saw hundreds of students flooding in the room and probably the most pizza I've ever seen in my entire life. And then I just started to think about what it would be like if all 13,000 of you were in one room and we had to put that many pizzas together. I don't know if there would be enough space. So it's great that we were able to host this virtually. I'd like to thank CS50 for really putting this all together. I hope you had a great time. And with that being said, I'm going to turn over to the person who's graciously put these together, I think for the last 4 or 5 years, the puzzles, that is Matthew Warshauer from Facebook as well. So Matthew, I'll turn it over to you to start kicking us off with some of the solutions to these puzzles.
Great. Thanks, Ben, and hi, everybody. I hope you all had a good time this weekend. I have a long history with Facebook and the CS50 puzzle hunt. I'm off camera, but I was there in that 2011 photo. I think I'm about 4 feet to the left of what's captured in the screen. And I think with one exception, I've either participated in or written most of all of the last 10 years of CS50 Puzzle Hunt. So it's so exciting to see this and how this has morphed and grown and evolved over time. Let me dive right in, and I'll share my screen here, and we can walk through the solutions to what I hope were some real mind-bending challenges over the weekend. All right, so let's talk through the solutions. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about some of the statistics that we collected from all the surveys you filled out over this weekend, and how sort of everyone felt about how this all went. So about 45% of people thought the puzzles were hard, another 12% thought they were too hard. About a third, 35% thought the puzzles were just the right level of difficulty, and a very impressive around 8% thought the puzzles were either easy or too easy. So you all, there's lots more challenges out there for you. I'm going to go through each puzzle in turn in the order of sort of how you rated the easiest puzzles to the hardest puzzles. So let's start. This is not the order that they were in the packet. I'll sort of walk through the solution to each puzzle and the process of how we get there, and then share a few statistics afterwards about how many people got it right, if it was people's favorite puzzle, things like that. So let's start with The Sound of Silence. This puzzle was written by a Facebooker named Cameron Bates. This puzzle just starts with a link to a mysterious audio file. But if you listen closely, you can hear some pretty recognizable dots and dashes, some beeps and some beeps. This is Morse code, which you might be familiar with, a sequence of dots and dashes that map back to the alphabet. And over here on the left, you can see all the dots and dashes actually written out. And here's a key to how to translate Morse code. Now, if you actually translate these into letters, you get kind of some gibberish, some nonsense letters. These don't mean anything. These aren't any words. But if you look closely, you might realize that each set of letters is very close to being a word. In fact, it has a silent letter that's missing that would make it a word. One common theme you'll see throughout all the puzzles today is that everything is a hint. Everything in the puzzle is designed to help you get the answer. So here, The Sound of Silence, it's not just about you're listening to things, but it's also silent letters are an important thing that you're looking for. So the P in Psycho, for example. If you take all these letters, P, U, N, C, well, that's also one silent, mostly silent, letter away from your final answer in this case, which is punch. Now, this puzzle was the most correctly solved puzzle. 1,805 teams solved this puzzle right. It was the 5th most favorite puzzle with 219 teams. It was by far the consensus easiest puzzle in voting with 1,128 teams. And also, as makes sense, the fewest people thought this was the hardest puzzle. But I want to be clear, there is no shame in thinking some puzzles are easy and some puzzles are hard. These puzzles are all very different. They all require different leaps of logic, different types of intuition, different types of knowledge. And a puzzle that's really easy to one person might be the hardest in the world to another person, or vice versa. Now let's talk a little bit about Under the Radar by Zach Zagorski, also from Facebook. This puzzle is a little like a crossword puzzle. You get this grid, and you get all these sort of vague clues with a number next to them. Let's start with the clues. The numbers tell you how many letters there are in the answer. So for instance, a teen's salary, that's 9 letters long, that's allowance. A 7-letter lopsided victory is a blowout. 7-letter subscribes to on Twitter, well, that's follows. As you start to fill these in, or fill some of them in at least, you might realize they all contain the letters low, L-O-W, which, you know, right there at the top of the puzzle, it said, how low can you go? Like I said, everything is a hint. You start to fill into the letters in the grid. It matches exactly. They're in a different order, but the ones that are 7 letters go in the columns that have 7 letters, and you'll notice all the LOWs line up exactly in the highlighted squares. But that's not enough. That's not an answer. We need to get to a short word or phrase, a 5-letter short word or phrase. So we go low. We continue to go low. And you look at the bottom of this grid. And if you read out the bottom of this grid, why? It says intermediate state. But intermediate state is still not an answer, right? It's not a 5-letter answer. Intermediate state is a common crossword clue, though, with a common 5-letter answer, and also a time when you might ask the question, how low can you go? And that's when playing limbo, which is our answer. Another fun little hint here is the LOWs essentially form a limbo bar across the puzzle. This was about in the middle in terms of people getting it correct. This was the 5th most gotten correct puzzle, but it was voted the 2nd easiest puzzle by people who filled out the surveys. It was the 6th most favorite and also considered to be one of the least hard. Now, Planning Commission. This is a logic puzzle, and everything you need to know about this logic puzzle is explained at the top. You need to fit mark two boxes in each row, column, and bounded area, and no two houses can be adjacent. They can't be diagonally adjacent, they can't be side by side, no adjacency whatsoever. This is a step-by-step logic puzzle. There is only one solution to each of these two puzzles. For each town, you put them in the area with none adjacent. You can look, and let's look at an example. In this town B, in this CHL region, there must be houses on C and on L, because you need 2 total in the area. There's only 3 spots, so 2 out of the 3 spots are going to have houses. And if there was a house on H, then there couldn't be a house on C or L. That would be adjacent. So there can't be a house on H. So by process of elimination, there must be a house on C and L. I'm not going to walk through the entire logic and steps to solve both of these puzzles. Let's just jump to what you actually get. You fill it out, you indicate, these are all the houses. But now what? Well, now you read across these towns and it says, what triple star system is closest to Earth? Well, a little bit of astronomy knowledge or a little bit of Googling will tell you that the answer is Alpha Centauri. There's also a fun little Easter egg here. This type of puzzle goes by many names. One common name for it is a star battle puzzle. So it was nice to have an answer that paid homage to the stars. Now, this planning commission was the second most successfully answered puzzle with 1,586 teams, and it was the favorite puzzle by voting, with 397 teams saying that this was their favorite puzzle. Unusually, this puzzle was also considered the 3rd easiest and the 3rd hardest puzzle. So a bit of a split thing here. Some people, I think, thought this puzzle was pretty easy, and some people thought this puzzle was pretty hard. Like I said at the beginning, sometimes one of these puzzles just clicks and it works and it sort of lines up with your brain, and that's great. And sometimes it just doesn't and it's hard, and that's okay too. So now let's talk a little bit about Talk is Cheap, which I'll note was adapted from the 1994 MIT Mystery Hunt. In this puzzle, it's a word search, but you don't know the words that you're searching for. The hint here is in the title. You're looking for words related to money, related to currencies, right? And we can find one in the top row pretty easily, right? Euro, E-U-R-O, is of course a currency. Now, if you look carefully through each grid, each row and each column, you'll find exactly one currency name. So the rows are things like the euro, the zloty, the peso, the yen, columns, the baht, dollar, dinar, yuan, etc. Right? And this leaves 6 spaces left over. And if you read out those 6 squares, you'll find the answer to this puzzle, which is payout. This puzzle was the 3rd sort of most correctly answered puzzle, with 1,535 teams answering it. It was, by consensus, people's least favorite puzzle of the hunt. Only 167 teams picked this as their favorite puzzle. But I think, again, that means for those 167 teams, this was the puzzle they had the most fun with. This is the one they loved the most. And that's something I really love about puzzle hunts, is everybody has their own pieces of it that they like, that they love, that they enjoy the most. This was right in the middle of the pack when it comes to people's ratings of whether it was easy or hard. Now let's talk about universal truth. This one starts with a mysterious list of letters, and you might be able to recognize some patterns in the letters, but there's also some hints in the title. Universal, it was ambitious, and it was phased out are all hints to help you realize that this is about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as in Universal, which famously came in phase 1, 2, and 3. It was phased out, and which at the Avengers movies was sort of broadly described as, in an interview that was then, I think, memed a lot, one of the most ambitious crossover event of all time. Each set of letters is, or at least is close to, the initials for a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. So AE is Avengers Endgame. Ant-Man and the Wasp is Ant-Man and the Wasp, AMATW, right? But some are missing. So B is Black Panther, right? But there's a P missing. We can pull out all these missing letters, but it doesn't really make any sense. ACC, IP, FT, OIAM, like that doesn't mean anything. But you might realize these clues are just in alphabetical order. That's not an order that is important to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but these movies were released in an order. So let's look up the order these movies were released in and then reorder it. If you read out these in the new correct order and use the L that's pre-filled in on the answer space on the puzzle page, you get the answer to this puzzle, which is fait accompli. This puzzle was the fourth most correctly solved puzzle with 1,505 teams. It was the third most favorite puzzle with 291, and starting to get towards the harder end of the spectrum. So this was the fifth most, the fifth easiest puzzle according to our voting, and the sixth hardest puzzle. So again, I think this is one where some people thought this was easy, some people thought this was hard, sort of in the middle. Now we're going to get to the last few puzzles, which start to get more challenging, right? Or at least based on how people's rated them. So this puzzle is called We're Hungry, and it talks about 22 very important people who just came into a restaurant. Can you help these diners get what they need? It's just a list of notable people. Some are you might be aware of, some you might not know about, depends. But they all need help. We can actually solve this puzzle one party at a time. So let's just start with party one. And we have these 5 people listed. All these people, with a little bit of research, you might discover, are the namesakes for major international airports in these cities. So Charles de Gaulle is in France, Leonardo da Vinci is the namesake of the airport in Rome, and so on. Now, this is all right, but what do you do from here? Well, imagine drawing the flight path from between those people and those cities in that order. So for party one, we would go from Algiers up to Paris, to Rome, to Warsaw, to Belgrade. Well, if you look at that, that kind of looks like the letter M, right? And in fact, it is the letter M. If you repeat this for all 5 parties, you'll get 5 letters, right? M-E-N-U-S, menus. And after all, what do hungry diners at a restaurant need more than menus? And menus is our answer. This puzzle, only 1,236 teams got correct. And that was the 6th most correct answered puzzle. It was the 4th most favorite puzzle with 249 teams. Only 80 teams thought this was the easiest puzzle, and 160 teams thought this was the hardest puzzle in the hunt. Now let's talk a little bit about probably the 2 hardest puzzles in the hunt. And again, hardest varies a lot. Some people these were great and easy for, and some people other ones were really great and hard for it. That's part of what makes this exciting. This is Lost Pets, which is also by Cameron Bates. Lost Pets, have we gone blind? We can't find our pets anywhere. These 3 characters, and then this grid with a number of countries in it. Let's just start with the characters for a second. And remember that the title is Lost Pets. Each of these characters has a pet that is a very particular color, right? So Steve from Blue's Clues has a blue dog, that's blue. Ash from Pokemon has a yellow Pikachu. Marvin the Martian from Looney Tunes has a green dog. We'll come back to these colors later, but this is a hint to help you think blue, yellow, green. Now let's remember those colors and turn our attention back to the countries in the grid. And now note, we've started thinking a little bit about color. Each country has a flag with just a few colors on it. For instance, the Canadian flag contains red and white, right? And you can repeat this for all the countries in the grid. But then we do the most interesting thing, which is look at the grid for countries with those pet colors. So let's start with blue, which was Steve from Blue's Clues, color blue. And let's just mark all the countries that have blue in the flag of the country, right? So South Africa, Brazil, Tanzania, Ukraine, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and so on. Now there's one more thing we need to do. How do we actually get an answer from here, right? Let's go back to the title and the hint. Have we gone blind? Well, if you're worried about going blind, you should probably learn Braille, which is a system for touch-based alphabets, right? Where you have a 2x3 grid, and that 2x3 grid contains dots, and those dots help you translate a letter. You can divide this grid into 5 2x3 sections, which essentially creates 5 Braille letters. And if you do those 5 Braille letters, you get B-L-A-C-K, you get black. But that's not the answer. It's not long enough, and you're not done. Let's repeat that for blue, yellow, and green. Blue, if you do that process on this grid, you get black. Yellow, you get green. And green, you get gold. Just looking at which flags have blue, yellow, and green in them. Black, green, and gold, that also is not a good answer, does not fit in our space. So what do? Well, this whole thing is then about countries and the colors in their flag. So what country has a black, green, and gold flag? Well, that's the answer, and it's Jamaica. This puzzle, by some measures, was the hardest. So the fewest teams got this correct. Only 769 teams got this correct. 199 teams listed this as their favorite puzzle. It was the 7th sort of most favorite puzzle. It was ranked 7th in terms of easiest. 45 teams did think this was the easiest, but 1,078 teams, which that should say first, thought this was the hardest puzzle. So then let's get to our last puzzle, one of the hardest by a different measure. This one is called Ask the Experts, and you get a bunch of stuff to start this puzzle. You get this hint, periodically Raleigh and Ramsey help us out. You get this long list of names. You get a bunch of blank spaces, some of which are marked of different lengths. So what do? Let's start with the names. A little bit of searching will quickly help you realize that these people are the last names of Nobel Prize winners, right? All experts in their fields. The winners are from just a few years. If you actually work out and look up each one, they're from 1936, 1954, 1986, 2002, 2010, and 2018. But there's 1 or 2 names oddly missing from each year. So Anderson is missing from 1936, or Soyinka is missing from 1986, and so on. Let's cut down the stuff on the slide a little bit, and let's just look at the year and the missing person or people. When we can look back at the grid, and you might note some of those names might start to fit in this grid, but they're not enough, right? In fact, those names fit on all the right side, everything to the right of the colon, those names fit into. But where do you put them? What do you put on the left side? What do you do? Well, this is where we have to think more about the title and hint of the puzzle once again. We look back at the top end to see who are Raleigh and Ramsey. Well, they're 2 scientists who won Nobel Prizes in 1904 for discovering noble gases. Get it? Nobel Prize, noble gases. And we also have another little nod to that from this reference to periodically, as in the periodic table of elements. You might notice that each year corresponds to the atomic number of a noble gas. So 36 is the atomic number for krypton. 54 is the atomic number for xenon. 10 is the atomic number for neon, etc. Now, let's just resort by atomic number instead of by year. And now the name of the element and the names who are missing from the list of experts line up perfectly. They fit into all the blank spaces. And if you read out the marked letters, you get what no group are they in. In this case, no is short for number. And the group number for the noble gases is, of course, 18, which is our final answer of our 8th puzzle here today. This puzzle was the 7th most correctly answered puzzle, with 1,135 teams getting it correct, but it was also a very popular puzzle. 388 teams, the 2nd most of any puzzle, listed this as their favorite puzzle. Though we put these statistics together quickly this morning after giving everyone a chance to finish, this should say, ask the expert statistics. However, only 12 teams thought this was the easiest puzzle. So very, very few people thought this was the easiest, and a lot of teams thought this was the hardest puzzle. to see sort of some of this stuff together, we can look at all the puzzles by which ones got the correct answers. And you can see The Sound of Silence had the most correct answers. Then you had a cluster with Planning Commission, Talk is Cheap, Under the Radar, and Universal Truth at sort of between 1,400 to 1,600 teams getting it correct. Then Ask the Experts and We're Hungry were both around 1,200 teams getting it correct. And then about 750 teams got Lost Pets correct. The favorite puzzles, Planning Commission and Ask the Experts, way above the rest, followed by Universal Truth and We're Hungry. By far, people considered The Sound of Silence to be the easiest puzzle, followed by Under the Radar. And by far, teams considered Lost Pets to be the hardest puzzle, followed by Ask the Experts. Now let's look at the distribution of scores by team. So we had 600 teams get all 8 puzzles correct. Huge congratulations to everyone on one of those teams. But I also want to say everyone who got even one puzzle correct deserves a huge congratulations. These puzzles are hard. They are designed to be challenging. They are designed to that they take work and that they take thought and that they take creativity and they take problem solving. A lot of the things that make one effective at computer science, which is one of the reasons that we've long felt there's such a great match between CS50 and the Puzzle Hunt. Thanks for participating. On behalf of everybody at Facebook, we hope you had a ton of fun today. Now let me turn it back over to Professor Malan to sort of share some closing thoughts.
Indeed. Thank you so much to all of you for participating, whether you got 8 or 7 or 6 or 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 or 1 or didn't get any this time. Realize that these things just take practice and experience. And if you take a look at CS50's website and social media, you'll see any of these puzzles and more in the years to come. Special thanks, of course, to Matthew for having spearheaded so many of this year's puzzles and many puzzles past. Ben and Emily and Nick, without whom it wouldn't be possible. On behalf of myself and Brian and CS50's whole team, thank you all. This was CS50 Puzzle Day. Take care.